Edge Archery. I'm here with Raul Reyes from Fletcher Brothers. We're going to be going over an elk bow build today. Raul's going on his first elk hunt this year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I know he's got to be excited. And so we're going to build his bow. We got a new Prime Nexus 4 here, and we're going to go through everything we do to make this bow really effective for killing an elk out in the mountains. It's a little bit different, actually a lot different from a whitetail bow setup. And we're going to go over each of those things and why we do them, and I'll explain to you kind of the science behind it and why we do those things to help us kill an elk. So we got some really cool products we're going to be putting on this bow. First of all, we're going to start off with the heartbeat of it. This is going to be the Hamscu Trinity rest. This is the new one that just came out last year. It's a dual ball bearing system, both front and back, instead of the old hybrid hunter, which only has one. Also, Raul is sponsored by Shrewdarchery products, and he will be shooting the new RevX stabilizer system on the back bar. Then we got the Option 8 sight, which I think is the best elk hunting sight made, and we're going to go talk about why that is. I'll kind of give you the reasons why as we build the bow. And lastly, something kind of unique this year that Raul is going to be trying for the first time is the new Option Equivalizer. You know, this thing came out about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was kind of a novelty item. I didn't think we'd sell any of them, but I will tell you what, for the mountain hunter, this is the most effective system because I'm eliminating one piece of gear, and it's giving me a target bow feel, and we're going to talk about that also as we get to the setup part of this. We've also got his arrows are Easton match grade 5mm Axis Pros, and we've got them tipped with G5 Strikers. V2s, and this sucker is a deadly system. I know you killed a really big red stag this year with this system, and we're kind of excited about it. We actually built this arrow for a previous video, correct?
Correct.
So if you have any questions about it, this was built for an elk hunter. For elk hunting, and go back and watch the video because it's got some cool stuff on it and why and how we built this arrow specifically to kill big game animals.
I can drop the link from that video in the body of the comment section YouTube, so you'll be able to go back and click on it and watch that big game arrow build.
Awesome, awesome. So anyways, we're glad to have you. Stick around and watch this with us. It's going to be a great build process. If you got any questions, make sure and just tag us in the Facebook page or YouTube where we release this video, and we'll make sure and get those questions answered for you at any time. Okay, so we're installing the Hamscu Trinity rest, and I'll tell you what, if you're around our shop at all, I think we just love these limb drivers. They are so much more efficient. There's a lot of videos out there also that you can watch that show the limb drivers in action. And what I mean is a limb-driven rest. So unlike most rests that are cable-driven, they run off your cables, these run off the limbs. And what that does is it makes the rest a heck of a lot more accurate as far as efficiency. And the reason is your arrow is being cradled by the rest about 50% longer on a limb-driven rest than it is on a cable. The reason is the first thing to move on your bow is your cable. There's a lot of slow-motion video out there on YouTube you can watch, and it shows the time differential between a cable-driven rest and a limb-driven rest. And it is really about 50%. So that's what makes this rest so much more accurate. We're getting a lot more cradling of the arrow throughout its life cycle. So in the setup of your rest on any prime product, especially with the new center grips, typically we always run what we call half shaft high over the burger hole, and that is where the rest screws in. On the primes, because of their center grip technology, we actually run them pretty neutral, even sometimes a half a shaft low on the burger hole. So right now I'm going to be lowering Raul's rest down to get the clearance that I need to ensure that he gets proper arrow flight. Yeah, some of you guys out there probably look and say I'm eyeballing everything. I've been doing this for like 30 some years, so you get pretty good at it. Center shot pretty much right down the middle, so it looks pretty good right there. We'll lock everything down. And I'm going to go through tying on the rest. So like we talked about earlier, the rest will be tied down to the limb. So it's just a simple couple overhand knots, and Prime is pretty gracious in giving us these axle covers that we can screw onto. One of the mistakes that I see a lot of people make when they're installing these rests is the draw cord. This cord is what powers kind of the entire system as far as running it up and down. And I know archers are really OCD and they like their stuff really clean. So what they'll do is they'll either cut this tag end right here, which you can see right here. They'll cut it really super short, or they'll wrap it around and tie knots in it to kind of give it a clean look. And I'll tell you, from a tuning perspective and for us working on these rests, it's really important that we have plenty of tag end on these rests. So I always like to leave about 2 to 4 inches. And it's, yeah, it kind of looks funny maybe, but at the end of the day, it's accomplishing what I need to accomplish, which is giving me enough tag end to work with if something goes wrong with this rest. Because really the only thing that goes wrong is this cord will stretch. And when it does, it'll allow the rest to start coming up a little bit, and we'll have to retighten it to get it back down again. And it is a simple loosen this screw, take the tag end and pull tight down, and then retighten the screw. It is that simple. When we don't have enough tag here, it makes it extremely difficult for us to accomplish that, of course. So now we're going to install the Option 8 sight. I'm going to go over a couple of things and why this sight has really been so successful for us as a shop, and really why it's just, I think, a superior piece of equipment for the, especially for the spot and stalk hunter, not just the elk hunter. You know, we spend a lot of time in the mountains chasing mule deer also. You know, last year I was successful, got lucky to kill a bear. All spot and stalk scenarios. You know, there are some guys that definitely hunt over water. You know, as a hunter, I can do that in Texas, so I don't like sitting on water. We're really a pack hunters. We love to get out there and put on some miles. And this site is just superior in every way. And the reason is it's travel system, and it's really 2 sites in one that work independently of each other instead of some of the more traditional travel bar sites where you've got 3 pins and you've got a travel bar that runs up and down. But once you move that site to like 50 or 80 yards, your other 3 pins become irrelevant. And this site solves that problem where your travel pin runs independent of those. And if you come here, look up close here, Roll, you'll see that I've got 6 pins in here that I'm going to be able to set. And then this travel pin runs independent of it. So if I want to dial it down to 80 yards, let's say, and that bull overruns our shot window and gets into 40, Roll can go straight to his 3rd pin down, shoot 40 yards, not miss the shot. Every year I see elk hunters, you know, I guide a lot of elk hunters, and I see them where they're at full draw, the elk does overrun the window, and they're handcuffed. Their sight pins are completely off because they're typically 20, 30, and 40, but once you move that travel bar, you lose that ability. And it's a horrible thing to watch these hunters go through, because you just don't have time to let down and redial your sight to get back to 40. On top of the fact that elk see like turkeys, it's kind of hard to believe, but they will see movement and catch it instantaneously. So the second you start to let down, even if your caller is 45 degrees away from you, those elk see in the 180-degree plane, and they will bust you and be gone. I see it every year. It happens every year. That's why I'm such a big proponent of this site. The other nice thing about it is I can open this window up and remove my 6 pins, and now I've got 1 travel pin that I can focus on. And for us old guys, unfortunately Roll and I both are getting old, it's a lot nicer. I've got the 1 independent pin that I can dial all the way up to 20 here, and take it all the way down to the bottom of our sight window, down to 80 or 90 or 100 yards, wherever that sight ends up being. So once again, close the window, and I'm back in spot and stalk mode. If I'm on a super long range shot and I don't have any really luck of the bull overrunning, I can open it up and run my single pin. Actually, when I get back to Texas, it's no secret, 95% of our shots are at 20 yards. I'll run my pin up here at the 20-yard mark and leave my sight open for most of the year, actually. So that's what this sight is so darn effective. The other thing is, you'll notice we actually went with their hard mount system and not the dovetail. You know, it's kind of weird because you see all these sights with these 6, 9, I mean sometimes 10-inch dovetails. And I know there's a lot of science behind the fact that it creates rifling for you as far as the distance between your sight and your peep sight, the end of your sight. And it creates a scope effect or a rifle. You know, a long barrel rifle or shotgun is going to be more accurate than a short barrel. But I'll tell you, in archery it's a little different, because whenever you're talking about doing that with a rifle or a shotgun, usually when you're sighting in or you're shooting, you're not doing it offhand. You're on a bench you're on your pack, probably in the prone position, probably with bipods. We don't have that luxury with archery, so we're holding 9 pounds, 8 pounds out in front of us with the bow, and it creates a ton of movement. As an archer that shoots all over the country on the tour, if you look, you can even Google it and YouTube it, most of the pros out there will run their sights as close to the riser as they can get. And the reason is our number one nemesis is movement. When our pin starts to move everywhere, we get very uncomfortable as archers. And to try to get that bow balanced to where the pin is sitting there static, not moving, is extremely hard to do, especially when you're under duress. You got a big bull elk standing 20 yards from you, screaming his brains out. So we love the close-in mounts. You'll notice this sight is going to be no more than 2 or 3 inches. I always get a kick out of seeing these guys running their sights out to here. I don't know how they control the movement, and honestly, in my opinion, personally, I think it causes target panic. It will cause you to help start doing what we call drive-by shooting, where the pin is in there and it's moving, and then all of a sudden it gets there, and as soon as the pin hits the bullseye or the place you're trying to shoot, you punch the trigger. And that's what causes punching, which turns into target panic. And man, I can go into a whole other video about that. So we like to run our sights as close as we can to the bows as possible. Plus, we're kind of shortening the overall profile of the bow. Now, I'm kind of talking up both sides of my butt, because when we get to the equivalizer part, you're going to sit there and probably question it, but there's a reason. There's a method to the madness on why that equivalizer is sticking out there. We're going to go over that later. So anyways, if you don't have a dealer, take a look at these things online. These option sites are amazing. They're probably 90% of what we sell for all elk hunting situations. All right, next we're going to go to the stabilizers. As you all well know, Raul shoots a lot of target archery, and most everyone in the shop does. So one of the things that we like to do, especially for a Mountain West hunter, is really set your bow up like a target bow. And you know, we run 2 bars for just about everything. And you know, even if Raul wasn't running the equivalizer system and running the tight spot, which we love here, he'll run 2 bars for sure. It helps with bow balance. It helps with aiming, especially when you're looking at those long-range shots. So right now we're going to be installing the back bar on the prime. The prime's got a nice lower hole down here for us to mount our sidebar on. Works out really well. I say the only drawback is this is a pretty tight fit down here, so you've got to be a little patient. Using and honestly, you got to find a short Allen wrench like this, a short-headed one. We have this specifically for the primes, and then it's you don't get a lot of rotation with the screw when we're doing this on the primes because of the amount of clearance we have. But take your time, get it installed in there, and then this is the back bar. And the reason we have to use the back bars is twofold. Number one, we do it so we can offset the weight of the sight being on the left side of the bow. And I say left side because Raul is left-handed. So as a right-hander, it'll be on the same side of you on the right side. And because sights aren't light, they're heavy. And one of the things, when you fully load a system with the quiver on the outside with the sight on the one side of the bow, it creates torque, and a lot of it. And it'll cause your grip to be off-center and cause tuning problems, arrow flight problems if you don't learn to shoot it right. So we love the back bar system because it eliminates that for us. I can also control the bubble float with this back bar. A lot of people don't realize that. But this is a 3-way mount. It'll run in the X plane and the Y plane both, and allow me to adjust his stabilizer weight accordingly wherever I choose to do so. And we're probably going to have to kick this one out just a little bit, we're running pretty tight, and I'm not sure where Raul, where you're. We'll have to look at your bow torque and see where it's at when we get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this bottom screw here, and I'm going to kick this bar out just a little bit there. And what's nice is I can do it on any degree pitch angle I want to, and I'll get this retightened up, and our back bar will be installed. Now I'll tell you, just through experience with this prime, with the Nexus series, we're going to run a really, really neutral stance here. Meaning I've got this about pitched down maybe 3 degrees, I think, if we look at it. If anything, Roll as a target archer is going to want a long bow feel. You know, we shoot bows 35 to 37 inches for the most part, sometimes 40. The reason is that target archers have to have vertical stability. It's one of the planes in archery that we can use our equipment to control instead of us controlling it. So when we're looking at stabilizers, a lot of times you'll see guys, and we may end up doing it on the rolls, but I'm just going to show you for demonstration purposes. We may end up pitching that bar down like that to about 12-15 degrees. Heck, we could even go as far down as, you know, this is kind of exaggerating, but there's probably about 38-40 degrees. And there's some guys that do that. And the bigger reason why we do it, the science behind it, is because we're trying to create what we call elongation of the bow. We're trying to make the bow feel longer at the shot than it actually is. So you can take a 32-inch or a 34-inch bow, I can weight the bars and center them properly and make the bow feel like it's 40 inches long. And I call it elongation. I'm giving it felt elongation. I'm not really changing anything on the bow physically other than lowering the center of gravity and giving the archer a feel that the bow is a heck of a lot longer than it is. And when we do that, it creates stability, it creates pin movement reduction, and at the end of the day, it's just more accurate. I have a policy here at the shop. If you buy a 2-bar system from me and you're skeptical on it because it's something you've never done, we give a 100% money back guarantee. I've been doing that guarantee for 5 years, and I have not had one set of bars returned to me because this system works so much better than this typical standard front bar only. So we've got the Shrewd Revex mounted here. As you can see, Roll runs quite a bit of weight on this back bar. The reason is, once again, is to create stability, pulling the bow back to us. Understand that a bow on its shot is the bow has direction going forward all the time. That's why you see a lot of the old school archers, when they're shooting, their bows dump over forward. And I'll tell you, quite frankly, you probably won't see Raul, anybody in the shop. Typically, we won't run wrist slings. We don't need them anymore because this back bar, keeping all the weight backwards, allows this bow on the shot to sit down in our hand. It will actually come back and sit backwards in our hand, eliminating the need for that wrist sling, and it's one more or less piece of equipment we have to worry about and to get in the way at the end of the, for the most part. So this back bar with a lot of weight here, and what's nice is we can add, subtract weight as we need to for the archer, depending on what their grip torque is like, depending on the amount of front push we're getting, and really to stabilize the pin. I can go in and out with this bar also to make sure that when Roll comes to full draw, his bubble is centered and he has to apply no grip, torque, or adjustment to the grip to allow the bubble to sit center. So I can control all that with this stabilizer. That's really probably one of the primary things this back bar does. So there's just a lot we can do with the bow when we have these systems on here, and we encourage you to go out and try them because I guarantee you'll like them. Okay, probably one of the coolest pieces of equipment we've got going on this bow, which I know a lot of you are going to think looks weird, is the Equivalizer system. Like we talked about a minute ago, Raul is a target archer and does a lot of target archery, and our job is to make this bow feel like the same way. So this Equivalizer is going to help accomplish that system. So we're going to start the installation process here. It comes with a quick disconnect that we'll screw on the front, and it allows us to remove the Equivalizer quickly and efficiently if we need to, basically. It's a simple lock-in adjustment and we're ready to go. Now the Equivalizer is going to mount on the bow like so. And it's got a lock system here. We lock it down and we're done. Looks pretty weird. But I want to take a second real quick and Raul, can you grab my target bow in there for me? It's right there inside the window door to the right. We're going to make this bow feel and shoot like a target bow, which is going to, I can tell you, Raul will explain to you that he's a heck of a lot more accurate shooting target archer than he is basically as a bow hunter. And here's what we're trying to do. Here's a target bow from one of our customers, and as you can see, we've almost modeled it. We've got the back bar coming off the back, a bunch of weight, and we've got the front bar going off the front. Now everything's a little smaller in size because in the mountains we can't be lugging this thing around, of course, because it's so big. But we've created the same type of profile. And once I get his arrows loaded in here and everything, I'm giving him basically a 22-inch front bar with his Shrewd back bar system here, weighted, and it's going to create a ton of balance for this bow. So when he gets out there shooting 60, 70, 80, and 100 yards, which we encourage all of our Mountain West hunters to be effective to, he's going to be a heck of a lot more accurate with a lot less work to be put into it because he's going to let the bow do the work instead of him having to do the work. So once again, we are putting target bow technology in our Mountain West bows to make them give you the biggest chance to be the most accurate you possibly can be by using the equipment that's available instead of you, the archer, to have to do all the work. Okay, we've got our front mount for our Equivalizer attachment done, and we've also got the Quiver attachment done. And this is why this thing is so unique and why we like it so much. So when you're hiking back in the mountains or in the woods, you can put this in Quiver mode with this attachment right here and lock it in, and we have a quiver on the side of the bow. It's tucked in pretty darn tight. We got plenty of clearance everywhere to make sure we're not hitting, and we can hike in. We can actually shoot the bow in this mode too if we want to, basically, which is why we love it. So right now, as you can see, we have nothing else except for the Shrewd stabilizer sidebar mount on the bottom and the quiver here. So what we've done, we've eliminated one piece of equipment. Raoul typically would shoot this 12-inch Shrewd Revex bar, 14, excuse me, off the front side of this here. So now he would have his tight spot quiver here, his 14-inch Shrewd bar in the front, and his sidebar. But the Equivalizer has enabled us to remove this piece of equipment. Okay, so when he gets to the area that he's hunting, or he goes into hunting mode, and he's going to go on the spot or a spot and stalk, he's basically going to take the latch off, remove the quiver, make sure and reattach the latch, and put it into the stabilizer mode here, latch it down, and now he's got his stabilizer. So we've eliminated the quiver. So what this system does is kind of like the option sight. It's giving us two pieces of equipment in one. And I'll tell you, crazy effective as far as stabilizing the bow. If you guys, we showed it earlier, this bow now looks kind of like a target bow. You know, a lot of guys will complain this profile is long, but I'll tell you what, I've been hunting with it for 5 years in the mountains, the Mountain West, and we usually do them between 150 to 300 miles a year on average in a given season, and that's 30 to 32 days of hunting. And I have never had this become an issue as far as being able to move, with a lot of agility through the woods and hanging up on things. And I mean, we hunt some thick stuff. It just has not been an issue for us at all. The benefits far outweigh the possible downfalls as far as that goes, because when I get on a good bull at 70 plus yards, I feel like I'm drawing and holding my target bow, which for me is amazing, because as a target archer, we spend a lot of time out there shooting 3D and shooting indoor spots, and we'll run 7,000 to 10,000 arrows a year through our target bows. And then when it comes to hunting, we'll shoot the typical 100 to 300 arrows through our target bow our hunting bow to get it sighted in. Typically we won't draw it and shoot it very much after that. We'll go out there and shoot 3 to 4 times a year, hopefully, to harvest a couple of 4 or 5 animals, and that's why we take that target bow technology and put here, so that it feels like the bows that we're shooting all year long, and it makes us more accurate. We're more familiar with the bow, and this is an absolute lethal machine right now. I'm loving the way this thing's coming out. Really excited to get it tuned up and shooting. We wanted to make sure and show you the build process on everything. The last thing we're going to do now is install the Peep Site, and Option actually makes a Peep. Or if you want to kind of zoom in here, this Peep Site is oval, and it is made to match the housing here on this Option site, which is oval. So really cool, unique part that comes from Option, because it was one of our biggest complaints prior to them coming out with this Peep, and actually it's only been out a couple of years. We would use a 1/4-inch Peep. It is round, circular versus oval, but it still allowed you to see your bubble, which we're going to talk about here when we go to level the second and third axis on this site and how important that bubble is. So we've measured Raoul's peep height, and it's 6 inches. Something else to talk about real quick. A lot of guys, I had a guy come in the other day, he's about 6'4", like 315. He's a giant of a man. 32-inch draw length, I think it is, 32 1/4, and could not get any more than 75 yards out of his bow. And, when you hear something like that as an archer, as a bow technician, it's almost mathematically against the law of physics, because he should easily be getting well over 100 yards based off his power stroke being so long. Compared to Raoul and I, who are 2 short guys, we struggle at 26 inches to get 100 yards. But it's kind of cool to see Raul here for his height. He's running what's called a 6-inch peep height. People don't understand how important that is, because the longer I get this peep height, the distance between the loop and the peep, the farther I get point of impact downrange. So I see a lot of hunters, especially, that are anchoring extremely high in their cheek, sometimes even behind their ear. And for example, this guy who was 6'4", 6'5", he had a 4 3/4 inch peep height, which is actually 1 1/4 inches shorter than mine, which is unheard of, because he's a big man. And typically he will be somewhere between 6 and 6.5. But it had everything to do with this anchor point. So if you want to extend your range and be able to get out there farther in your shooting, so that your point of impact can get out to 80, 90, 100 plus yards, the longer you get this distance between the loop and the peep, the more range you're going to get. So Raul at 6 inches is amazing, actually, because I run 5.5, 5 3/4. Him at 6, which means that he is anchoring extremely low on the cheek, which is good for a couple of reasons. A, point of impact downrange, and B, the amount of string contact he's getting with his face, he's reducing it tremendously. When we get up here in the very, very top, in the high part of our face, we're going to sometimes get a lot of cheek contact, which, believe it or not, will cause tuning issues with your bow. But more importantly, you want to extend your range, get your POI really long out there, get this length. Go to your shop, come to us, whatever, and we'll go through and change your anchor point. With that gentleman, we had to put a kisser button on, which would control his head position. He ended up going up to about 6.5 inches, which he is now going to get 140, 120 yards fairly easy. Okay, we're going to go over probably one of the most important pieces, especially to a Mountain West hunter, and even to a whitetail hunter who's hunting out of a tree stand, especially, and even ground blinds. It's probably one of the most overlooked pieces that I think bow tuners or bow setup guys do not do in the average everyday archery shop, and that is setting your second and third axis. You're never in a situation where you're hunting on a piece of land that's as flat as a football field. So you're always going to have rises, slopes to deal with, especially if you're shooting uphill, downhill. And these axes are crazy important, because if you do not set them properly to the horizontal level of the lay of the land, then you are probably going to miss your target by quite a bit. It's funny because I see it a lot on TV shows. The guys on TV, the hunters, they'll miss right 4 to 6 inches. You guys have all seen it on there. They're saying it's a lethal shot. We all know it's a gut shot. And I think a lot of it's got to do with their second and third axis not being set on their bows, because if you do not have it set properly, you will definitely miss right or left by a lot, depending on how far your quarry is. I like to say, if your axis is off what we call half a bubble, and you're going to see that here in a second, at 20 yards, that can be about a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, and then it exponentially increases as you move out. I've seen some shots at 60, 70 yards missed by up to 4 to 6 inches, depending on the slope of the land that you're shooting on. So real important to do that. It's a really simple technique. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to find a flat surface on the bow and put the level on there, and in your bow vise, wherever you have to see it, make sure that your level is showing pretty, dead center. Okay, so that's leveling at least the bow. Now we've got to get the sight. So if you zoom in on the sight bubble there, you'll see that it's pretty far off. Check it out there. Okay, what's cool about this sight, and most sights, especially if you're paying a lot of money for a sight, I want to say $250 and over, they're going to have a second and third axis adjustment there. So as you can see, this bubble level needs to be tilted back towards me on the top side. So there are 4 screws on the option sight right here on the side, which allow me to do that. And I'm going to loosen these bottom ones. I'm going to tighten the top 2. Keep an eye on that bowl until she starts to walk across and get in the center. Now the other thing you got to do sometimes, because some of the bubbles, I can tell you on a shrewd scope, for example, their bubbles move extremely fast. And on some of the sights, like this one here, the bubbles will move a little bit slower. And I actually overshot it just a little bit. And I'm going to keep playing with it on these 4 screws, tightening and loosening, and watching that bubble.
They're pretty close.
Until she gets pretty darn close right there. And then once you do, you take all your screws and snug them up. So now I'll double check the bowl. I'm actually sitting over there too far a little bit again, so I'm going to loosen and crack these bottom 2 and retighten, and I'm just barely moving them now. Now I'm not even a quarter turn. We back in the middle there?
Looks pretty close.
We're pretty good in the middle. We'll check it against the bow a secondary time to make sure they match, and they look perfect. So if you check that out right there, we've got the bubble in the middle of the sight perfect, and the bubble on the bow is perfect. And that's your second axis adjustment. That's just the starting point. We're going to go over here on the other part, on another bench vise, and go over how we set the third axis. Okay, so now we're over on the Ram bench vise, and we're going to be showing you how to kind of do the third axis. This vise is really unique because it's got a three-way orbital balance system, which allows me to, no matter where the bow is profiled, I can get this bubble level centered here, which tells me the bow is completely centered in the vise to go through the process of setting the third axis. So what I'm going to do here is, before I tighten this completely up, I'm going to keep it loose, and I'm going to make sure and get the bow leveled in the vise. And we're going right there. And like I said, sometimes you got to tap that bubble to get it over there. And now we're back in the middle. The Ram vise is set kind of nice. It's already down dead center on this level here. And then what we're going to do, we're going to slowly duplicate a downhill shot. I'm going to move this down to watch how the bubble is traveling. And right now, Raul, if you can see this, I don't know if you want to see it zooming in here. If you can see it, the level sitting all the way over to the other side. See it?
Actually, what I'll do is let me go ahead and get the camera. I'll just bring it. I'll bring it closer over here.
Okay.
Okay.
See it?
That's right.
Okay, so you can see the bubble slammed all the way to the one side. So what we're going to do, we're going to actually loosen these two screws here, which allow me to move the sight where I want. So I'm going to loosen and tighten these until I get that level. Back where it needs to be. And this is hard on a lefty. Because I can't even see that other screw over there. Oh, come on. There, now you see the bubble starting to walk across. I'll tap it to get it back in the middle. And as you're tightening one, it's going to make the other one tight. Are we in the middle there, Raul?
I can't see it.
What do you think? Pretty close?
It's got to go. Go back to the right.
It's got to go back to the right a little bit.
A little bit.
So I'm going to loosen this one just a hair. And this is what that slow bubble does. You got to be real careful because this bubble moves extremely slow. That's why you'll see me tapping on it. Maybe a little more. I think we're pretty good there.
Pretty close. We're actually really good right there.
Yep. Now if you watch here, I'm going to pull this thing back up, and it shouldn't move as we loosen this to get it back up neutral. See how it's staying completely steady? And now that bubble is neutral, not moving at all. So that third axis is completely set, ready for you to shoot downhill or uphill and be, perfectly leveled and horizontal to the plane. Perfectly level to the horizontal plane, so that you don't have that arrow drift right or left. Crazy important, probably one of the most important things if you are setting up a Mountain West hunting bow because of the terrain. Okay, working on the Prime Nexus, we just got a left-hand tear. I'll tell you one thing about the Prime bow that we love is the fact they give you a bunch of these barrel shims. You actually get 4 of them, so they go from large to small. And we're going to completely change the shim profile on this bow so that we can get a better tear. So we had a left-hand tear, roll as a lefty, and these are the neutral shims. As you can see, they're marked with 2 dots, and that means that they're neutrals. So we're going to actually take this cam and shift it over to the left. Left-hand tear, we got to get the cam over to the left side. So we're going to run the fat one on the left side, on the right side, and run the skinny one, which has 1 mark on it, on the other side. Then we're going to put it back in the axle. This is a pretty quick and simple process. Probably the toughest thing. is lining everything back up in the holes. It's a pretty quick process. There we go. Put the axle retainer back on. And for the sake of time, we've already done the bottom one. And we are back in business. So now we've got a bow that's shimmed completely to the left side. And we're going to see what kind of tear we get. So you guys look here, we've got a pretty hard left tear. This is actually where we started. Right tear. We actually were a little low right, so I ended up dropping the rest down to get a perfectly vertical tear, but we're just right now. So doing that shim job should get us back up in the middle. We're going to check this out here when Roll shoots the bow, third time. Okay, after getting those shims replaced on the cam, this is what we get. Good bullet hole. He is ready to shoot. Okay, so we already finished up tying in what's called our lock knot. We like to tie these into the very bottom portion of the loop. You'll see it's a different color of green right here. I wanted to go over real quick about knock pinch. There's a misconception out there that this has to be tight. If you notice when I put Roll's knock in, I've got about 1/8 of an inch of clearance in between there. The reason is when he gets to full draw and this string goes to full draw, it'll create a pretty acute angle which will pinch the knock and this will allow it to pinch without getting it too tight. You can actually, if your knock is tight from this set and it doesn't move at all, when you get the full draw, especially if you're a longer draw length, 28, 29, 30 inches, you will actually put enough pressure on your knock and your arrow that your arrow will somewhat float off the rests. And it's really bad for tuning, really bad for arrow flight. Also will cause intermittent problems. Sometimes it'll catch it, sometimes it won't. So make sure you have plenty of clearance. If you go to 30-inch draw, I'll actually make this clearance in here a little bit bigger than 1/8. Right now, Roll is running about a 1/16, 1/8 of an inch. We'll run that a true 1/8 on a longer draw length. We're going to go ahead and get his peep tied in. We've got his peep centered up. I think it's in the right spot, and we're going to tie it up. See, if you look closely, we'll have we've got our knots running down the right side of the cable string, then we'll go around the peep sight, and then we'll go down the left side of the string, and it locks everything in nice and tight. We won't get any separation going this way. We'll reposition his knock, and this is very common. After I get everything tied in, we'll have to put this thing back in the press and get put a half a twist in the string to actually get the knock set, the peep sight rotating correctly. Now for a right-handed archer, Roll is being a lefty, we're going to make sure the peep rotation is sitting on the left side instead of the right. If you're righty, that peep will going to be on the right side because it's always going to turn over to the left side. So one of the things when I'm turning it also, I just put a half twist in it, and I'll reach up and grab and pull and add some tension. And as you can see, the positioning is still too far over to the right. And I'll pull and add tension, and then we're sitting pretty much dead level. The reason I pull on it that way is that a lot of guys will forget, without any tension on the string, that peep won't come back and rotate. Gives you a good idea of where it needs to be, so if you pull the tension on it, you won't have to operate your press back and forth like crazy. Make sure your strings and cables are in the right run. We're going to pull up a little bit. Now if you look, we're centered back nicely. And we'll go ahead and get the peep now, get the loop aligned with the peep. This is an important piece. Tuning tip. If your peep is not turning correctly, make sure and check your loop to see where it is in relation to your peep sight. It should be sitting in perfect perpendicular to the peep. If it's too far over to the right, it's going to over-rotate the peep. If it's too far to the left, it's going to under-rotate it. So we want to make sure that that is always the case. And grab your loop pliers, and I'll give it one last set. Roll likes it a little bit longer, 3/4 inch long peep, and we'll really give it heck. And also, when you're doing this, you don't want to put it in. I'm not even maximizing the lift on this loop pliers right here, because you don't want to dig into that serving. If you dig into that serving, then you got a whole other set of problems. That serving will actually start to slide and slip on you, which will cause tuning issues and also some inaccuracies. I think we're ready to go. All right, folks, here we go. Roll's going to start out at 20 yards. We're going to get this option sight sighted in today here at the shop. We're blessed that we can shoot 50 yards indoors here. We're going to see how his 20-yard shot does. Bow looks amazing. Okay, folks, here's shot number 2. Raul just brought up a very interesting point that we wanted to cover, is your peep height. He made a comment to me, man, Scott, there's something wrong. My peep is shaded to the bottom of the sight. I'm losing part of it on the top of it. And when it comes to western mountain hunting, especially because of the angles we shoot, uphill, downhill, it's really important to make sure that you always have the bottom of the peep, the bubble housing. Bro, I think we're in good shape, bro. You just made a perfect inside-out X shot on that shot right there, so we made the proper adjustment. But I wanted to talk over real quick the peep height, because when we get up on that mountainside, you mentioned, bro, what? The peep was a little low?
The peep, well, actually, the peep was above, wasn't lined up with the whole housing. I couldn't see the top half, but the bottom half I could see of the housing.
Right. And that's what I was saying. So we want to make sure and always have that bottom half, because when we get to 70, 80, 90, 100 yards, if you can't see that bubble, or if it's even not in your field of vision, then we're going to run into a whole lot of problems on your right and left. So I always want that peep sight shaded to the bottom side, because at 20, 30, and 40, it's not that crazy important, especially 20. But when we get out there past 60, it becomes pretty critical. But a hell of a shot, dude.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we got our 2 arrows, dead bullseye for 20 yards. Now we're going to back up and see what we got at 50. We are at 50 yards inside the shop. We're lucky we get to shoot down this lane. A little bit tight, but we're closed today, so this is easy. All right, after getting 20 yards in, we got 50 set in, so I think we're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so we're going to need the old guy glasses for this one. We're doing roll sight tape. He shot at 20 and 50, which gives us 2 marks to go off of, and I like to use our dial calipers for this project here. I've got 2 marks. We're going to come over here and line up those 2 marks with our calipers, 20 and 50. There we go, and we'll lock that in so they don't move. Then we're going to come over here to his sight tapes, and we're going to match those graduations to find the right tape. I'm going to tell you, this bow is extremely fast for what it is. So I'm going to sit here and take the time to match up the tapes. I found the one we're going to do. It's a pretty simple process. We're going to take it off. It's a sticker. Right now we're sitting on 50 yards. I'm going to remove our match tape. There we go. Now put his tape on. I'll try to stay out of the way of the camera. There we go. So as it stands right now, with that 400 grain arrow, as light as it is, the speed of this bow, Roll's going to get 130 yards out of this tape, which is amazing. So right now we're setting this bow up for the Total Archery Challenge, actually. We got that shoot here April 16th, 17th, and 18th. And he's going to get 130 out of it, which will cover most of those shots out there. It's pretty amazing with that arrow. And then what will happen is we're going to match up his heavyweight arrows for the elk hunt, and we'll have to just change his tape out. But if I had to guess right now, he's going to be right at about 100, 110 yards on his elk setup with the arrow weight difference. Okay, folks, we're done with Raul's elk build, and I tell you what, it came out really good. We're really excited. All the numbers are coming out perfect. You know, we actually were able to sight in a 400 grain arrow and a 480 grain arrow to hit pretty much the same at 20 yards. And that's going to be a big deal when we go to switch tapes to get his slower tape in for the elk, for that elk setup. Because he is getting this set up for Total Archery Challenge initially, which is next month. I mean, I tell you what though, this prime Nexus is pounding. I am shocked at how fast it is. He's going to get with this 400 grain arrow up to 130 yards, which is just perfect for tack. Because they'll put those elk targets out there, I think around 120 to 130. So you're going to be able to cover all the bases. And that's at 26.5-inch draw length. And that's why I was so impressed with this bow, with the speed we're getting out of it. You know, Prime is definitely one of our top 3 picks for this year for a mountain west hunting bow. And really the big reason is that it's got such an incredible back wall. You can adjust that let off from 60 to basically 85%. And that even at 85, it really feels like you're holding nothing. You know, I've been on camera and held these bows, these primes, up to 3.5 minutes before I killed before. So as an elk hunter, that is absolutely a must-have because those elk will hang up on you and sit out there and wait to make a turn, and you've got to be able to hold your bow a long time. You know, the second thing I noticed with the bow that they really did is this bow's a lot quieter than last year's.
Yep.
Took a lot of the vibration out of the bow, and it's really quiet. And the other big complaint that people had with the bow is how it worked its way into the draw stops. You know, the thud that it made, and that's gone. So the engineers did a great job on the cam design to get rid of that, but still keeping that back wall feel that it's got to allow you to hold as long as you want to. So like I said, and plus the grip. I mean,
oh yeah,
that new grip is pretty
yep.
nice, and it will be nice when you're in the elk mountains and you get one of those 20, 30-degree mornings, which can be pretty brutal. The new hammered gray color, this bow blacked out, as you can see, it just turned out absolutely amazing. Really excited about it. You know, I'm going to give Raul a little shout out because he does use the pink out there for breast cancer awareness. I mean, his family member had it, and I think that's awesome that we're doing something like that to keep her in our thoughts.
One thing I want to add about the back wall, to go off what Scott said. It's got a solid back wall, especially for me because I hunt and I use target. I use a hinge release. So yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about that real quick about how important that is, having a solid back wall.
Yeah, that solid back wall and the hinge is really important so you don't creep off of the back side, which you can do with a thumb or a trigger release. The hinge requires us to maintain full extension in the shot. We have to be on that back side to make that hinge go off and shoot the way we want it to. And Raul hunts with the hinge release like I do. And you know, at the end of the day, it just makes you a heck of a lot more accurate when you got to take one of those 80 or 100-yard shots, which, you know, can be the norm out there in the mountains. But man, I tell you what, just an amazing setup. You know, it's kind of cool to see Raul go to the Equivalizer system. You know, one of the things we didn't touch about, and I want to talk about real quick, is one of the reasons why I love this system so much is that every year I have the Equivalizer on my bow, and I will put on in between 150 and 200 miles with my bow sitting just like this. And it makes it so nice when you're carrying it. And what's cool, when you got your pack on, you can actually not hold it at all and go hike through the mountains. A lot of the guys that don't use these, they get kind of jealous because they're always holding their bow with their hand. This is actually a nice feature that this Equivalizer does for us, and we really like it for that reason. But going to that system, how'd the bow hold?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great.
That's one of the great things. I mean, he's basically got a short stabilizer bar that's about 10 inches shorter than a typical 30-inch bar in a target bow, with his shrewd back bar also. It makes it feel like a target bow. Correct?
Balance is perfect.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. And then, and once again, eliminating one piece of gear, because we can put this over into the quiver mode, and we don't have a front bar, which is keeping the weight and the ounces down, which is going to help you. You know, it's always better to take more food in ounces than it is equipment, because we got to eat when we're on the mountain. So, option sight is just amazing for all of y'all that do hunt out west. You got to take a look at these sights. The option sights are just the best in the business when it comes to a mountain bow, because of the fact, and it was funny because Raul a minute ago was wanting me to check the clearance for his arrows to make sure he had plenty, so when the housing comes down, and I'm like, hey, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Nope.
No, because the pin travels independently, so it's awesome. Man, I hope you like the video. I hope you guys like this setup. Come down to the shop or go to your local shop and look at some of these products if they have them. And if you want a Mountain West type bow, this is the way to do it. And like I was saying, you can make a great elk bow a great whitetail bow. You're not going to make a great whitetail bow a great elk bow. I'm not saying you can't kill one, you can, but to take advantage of all the technology and to remove all the barriers to ensure that you can harvest your animal as quickly and efficiently as possible, get it set up like this. And then when you come home to hunt whitetails, it's just going to be that much more lethal.
Yep. If you have any questions, just leave us some comment or PM us, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And I'll put the contact information for Leading Edge Archery in the body of the video. So thanks for watching.
Yeah. Good luck out in the mountain this year.
See you next time.
Take care.